प्रोग्राम में खुशामदीद नाज़रीन। हमारे पास पैनलिस्ट मौजूद हैं। दो का ताल्लुक कार्नेगी इंडाउमेंट फॉर पीस से है। ये बहुत अहम इदारा है और अमेरिका में जो ये इदारा रिसर्च करता है वो अमेरिका में पाकिस्तान के बारे में डिबेट को डिफाइन भी कर सकता है। इसके अलावा पाकिस्तान के रिसर्च नुमाइंदगान भी बैठे हैं और जो पाकिस्तानी हैं लेकिन अमेरिका में पढ़ाते हैं वो भी मौजूद हैं। लेट्स गेट बैक इनटू द बिग क्वेश्चन दैट यू थ्रू। वाज इट would you want to take it up? Would you want to take it up?
Well, I don't want to preempt, but I would love to, because I think that's a great question. Why do countries like India, Turkey, I would add, China get positive coverage? And I think the world loves a growing economy. You know, people want to know who's successful, who's got it together, where can I invest, where can I make money? And India didn't get positive coverage until its economy started growing. China was the worst enemy of the United States after the Soviet Union. They started opening. Now everybody, even when you're competing with them, there's positive stories about China. Turkey, the economy starts taking off. All right, so question, you look at Pakistan, you say, well, where's the positive economic story to counter the very good point you made about, you know, the exporting. So you're exporting terrorists, but not other things that people really want to buy.
So it's the economy, basically. I need to get that right.
I think that's right. You mentioned the lines outside the U.S. Embassy, people wanting to, go to the land of opportunity. Well, I think American business people look at India, look at China, some of these other states as the land of opportunity. That's where the real profits are to be made. That's why there's a positive image of those places, and that drives the perceptions, the media coverage, and so forth.
Firoz, economy basically defines who we are. And economy is something that can actually change that image problem that Pakistan has.
Today's world is about you. You got to have your stakes into a system for people to talk about you positively. People have to come here. People have to invest here. And in addition, they invest there. We talked about the think tanks. I mean, countries invest there in the think tanks within Washington and other places. We don't do that. Our public diplomacy is not very good either at the same time. I mean, Pakistanis have to do this to sell their country and image more. In addition to all those points that Ravin just said, this is a very important point. We don't come out. Oh, by the way, the Pakistani diaspora abroad is also very divisive. Outside even. They're very divided on the similar lines here. You don't find such a divisive diaspora of other countries in the United States. For example, India. There may be hundreds of problems, but when it comes to Indian position and their country, they're one. They never go and beat up their country in the media and all. I have not seen there in 10 years that I lived there. But you talk to ordinary Pakistanis, there's so much of infighting, and they do it publicly in terms of their diplomacies, in terms of their scholarship even. We talk about publication of the books. You name any books that have come out from in the last 10 years in the United States with a clear publication. The Pakistanis themselves are the authors of the book, have not written anything positive about themselves. Scholars who go and give talk shows there, they don't talk good about Pakistan. It's tough for people living like me there to talk about. Then you kind of isolated in the process. Then it looks like disingenuous that you are trying to hide or cover up things. So, on balance, it's become very tough for an objective analysis to be presented in the United States. Your embassies and other elements have got to be helped. So, Pakistan needs to really have a very strong public diplomacy, strategy from here.
So there's no broad gauge brush strokes that you could have. One, the picture is going to be built with small effort in every sphere, and then the larger issue of economy. Let's talk about how lasting these images can be from a historical point of view. When countries get bad images, can they rectify them in a short span of time, or do they stay with the world for a longer duration? You mentioned China. In the U.S. debate, it had an issue as far as its domestic political system was concerned, its HR treatment was concerned, labor was concerned. India has had all these issues. Turkey was, a country defined as a country that just had potential, and that's it. It could never live up to that potential. So can countries actually change images outside the world quickly in a short span of time?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of examples, and the two that are the most dramatic that come to mind are Germany and Japan after World War II. And in both cases, I would argue, especially the German case, it was economic dynamism. I mean, obviously they reformed, they were defeated, they reformed, politically, but the main thing, they became economic dynamos, and people respected that. And so the place must have something together, something going for it, that it's so productive, and that helps to change the narrative.
But it also had a Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
And in Pakistan, Marshall Plans don't work, Ijaz. I mean, external aid has been flowing in, talking specifically about getting the economy right. And we hear all those dollars that, you know, flowed into Pakistan, God knows where they went. And that's another question. How much the international community can help us do the right thing, you know, become a mini Germany or Japan?
Yeah, you know, in 2007, thereabouts, for instance, Newsweek did the story on what a fantastic economy Pakistan was developing. There were World Bank reports also. Now we know, with the benefit of the hindsight, which is 2020, that a lot of that analysis wasn't particularly on the dot, because the fundamentals hadn't been, you know, corrected. But having said that, I think if you grow at a pace of 7 to 8% over 2 or 3 years, you will begin to see the difference. And therefore, you know, let me put it like this. I've been arguing for a very long time that in relation, for instance, to India, that India interests the world. We worry the world. Mm-hmm. You know, so the world does come to us, but not because we are interesting them, but because we are worrying them. So we have to change that paradigm. The world, instead of getting worried because of us, needs to get interested in us. And I think that is where the difference lies. I mean, it's not possible, but just to emphasize my point, supposing all else was the way it is, you know, there were Taliban and they were crossing over and all that. But at the same time, there was a part of us that was growing economically. And let's say offering, you know, the U.S. 20 to 30,000 jobs, outsourced jobs, just like President Obama came to India looking for 50,000 jobs. When President Obama comes to look for 50,000 jobs in India, the very fact that the Indian J&K police has ended up killing more than 100 young stone pelters, the story will not make it in the international press. It's as simple as that. You begin to offer those 30,000 jobs, Washington will not accept the one odd Baloch subnationalist that holds forth there and begins to abuse Pakistan. You know, so, and at one level, perhaps this is not very moral. We can say, hey folks, you know, what is this? But the fact is that life isn't all about, you know,
ethics
and pride.
And you need to get certain things right.
Absolutely.
And this takes us to the fundamental issue. Does the world have patience with Pakistan? Our learning curve has been very wobbly and has been somewhat wide. But our trajectory isn't wrong. I mean, this is a country that wants democracy, that wants the rule of law. Even military generals submit before the Supreme Court, and the rest of the stuff that we have gone over. What is the patience level with this learning curve in the U.S. as far as Pakistan?
Frankly, I think that patience is wearing thin. You know, taking the long view, I think there is interest in seeing Pakistan develop along this trajectory that it's on. You're absolutely right. Some of the fundamentals are good. The Obama administration came in believing that a strategic partnership with Pakistan was the right thing to do. There was a lot of effort invested in both personal relationships and institutional arrangements and so forth. That hasn't really come to any sort of fruition. I think there's a lot of frustration in Washington. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration here as well, and there's sort of a regression to the you know, shared interests and nothing more beyond that. And unfortunately, looking at the politics in Washington, whether you have a second Obama administration, largely you'll probably see the same figures running the foreign policy establishment there. If it's a Romney administration or whatever other, you know, Republican candidate, frankly, those people might even have less patience for Pakistan than the folks in the current administration. So I think there's been an opportunity that's really been missed for a near-term, you know, paradigmatic shift in the relationship. Unfortunately, that means that it'll take a little while for the cycle to come back around again, where there's possibility to really join the relationship in a way that lasts.
Firosab, your take on the patience level?
Yeah, it's both yes and no. I would slightly give a different view. It's both yes and no. No for the reason that it is wearing thin, as Toby rightly points out, and we observe that. The yes part is basically, you know, the world will not wait for Pakistan. Pakistan has to jump on what's going on in the world. I mean, it's a nation state must decide what it has to do. The global system is not going to change for a state. The state must adjust to that. I mean, that's as simple as that. I think, George, what you were mentioning about countries closer to home, India and Japan, we were talking earlier on. Well, they made a conscious policy decision changes. China did that in 1980, India did that in 1991, and that's changed in 20 years' time, 30 years' time. You got to make a major monumental difference and change in your policy and outlook for the world to carry. It will evolve, it will come down. And I would believe that because of the tremendous resources and talent in Pakistan, it will be much faster than any other country. We only need to do those two things. And the geographical location, and when President Obama goes to India and tells the Indians, Pakistan is a very strategically important country. And, you know, it's most important country for you, the Indians. He means it truly. And I think any conscious and any educated American who understands the region knows this particular fact. We get our house in order in Pakistan right, it's only a matter of 4 or 5 years' time we have to go through that window. And that things will completely change depending on how Pakistan, you know, makes use of this globalization process and the really transformation in the world that's going on.